Cars have become a pretty staple part of our lives, and they're a very convenient way from getting from A to B. But for some, they're more than just a mode of transport. It's a status symbol, it's an investment, and for others, it's a pretty good way of looking cool. And understandably, you'd probably think of Porsches and Ferraris when you think of looking cool. But there's another way of looking way different from everyone else on the road, and that's investing in vintage. No, not that kind of vintage. I've been driving a pretty special car for quite some years now, and to be honest with you, I'd never look back. I'm Jade du Preez, and this is Investing in Vintage. This is my 2006 Mini, and I love this car. Flaws and all, I love it with all my heart. I am thoroughly aware that it is tiny. I'm 5'1" and sitting quite comfortable, but anyone over 5'4" is doomed. I am aware that the interior is slightly dated, and I would never in a million years pick that fabric for my seats. And something might have fallen off the bottom of it a couple of months ago, and I have spent thousands of pounds keeping it on the road, even though a lot of people my age would probably consider it a hunk of junk. I just love it regardless. I'm aware that it's not perfect, but it just holds that special place in my heart. The vintage car market is like art and fashion. It just takes the right person to love an item for it to be really profitable. As of May 2018, the most expensive car ever sold was a 1963 Ferrari 250 GTO, which exchanged hands for an incredible $70 million US. But when is the car eligible for promotion to vintage status? There are so many classifications: vintage, heritage, classic, milestone, antique, collector, just plain old. There's almost too many to choose from. Classic cars are defined by the Classic Car Club of America as they represent the pinnacle of engineering, styling, and design for their era. All these categories have collectability and icon status at heart, but they are also considered worth preserving. For example, the Aston Martin DB2 Mark I is an iconic car, and the Morris Mini Moke is highly collectible and a lot cheaper, but they're two totally different cars. Vehicles of historical interest status is an added perk for certain classic cars. They don't pay road tax fees or need to be MOT'd, and if they do, then they don't have to adhere to current roadworthiness tests, so emission standards and other modern tests don't apply. To be classed as a VHI, an expert may need to examine the car, but there are no shortage of specialist experts for more than 200 UK companies able to declare. They've got a lot of cars to check too: Ferrari, Porsche, Ford, Aston Martin, Mercedes, Rolls-Royce, Jaguar, Chevrolet, MG, Alfa Romeo, Lotus. The list is endless. The only real downside to a heritage car is, well, you just kind of don't have the access to the tech you do nowadays. You can't just sit in front of a laptop and dream up your ideal Corvette Stingray or Mercedes 300 SL Gullwing. And in my eyes, those cars don't need to change. They're classics and they're beautiful. But you can't do that nowadays. You can use a car configurator and you can change any aspect of a car that you want, and then it tells you how many pennies you owe at the end of the day. Normally it's quite a scary amount of pennies. And to be totally honest with you, they seem like a lot of fun. So I'm going to give a couple of them a shot, see how I go with them. I'm going to try the Aston Martin, the Ferrari, and the Porsche configurator, and we'll just see how I get on, see if they tempt me. See you on the other side. I'm sure we can all agree that these are some seriously beautiful cars. They're everything I could ever want in a car and more. I even got to experiment a little bit with a couple of things that, well, I probably wouldn't have tried. But something that's weighing on my mind is, how are we ever going to take risks with design if we can just delete things so easily? Yeah, it's great that you can design these incredible cars, but will we ever end up with Chrysler Thunderbolts or Cadillac Cyclones, really crazy cars, if, well, you can just delete it if you don't think it's cool? I couldn't help but think about the cars I designed on the configurator. Absolutely beautiful cars, undeniable. power to drive one of them. But they're not a vintage car, you know? But I do kind of feel like I need to get back to my roots. It was super fun playing with all those techie configurators, but I need to go back to my roots. And that's where I'm heading right now. I'm taking you with me. So I came down here to Peter Vardy Heritage to speak to an expert, Steve Lister, who can give me a better understanding of the vintage market and let me check out some of the amazing collection they have here on the lot.
We have a variety of cars, such as an Aston Martin nut and bolt restoration, which nobody really would drive. That's something you would just keep as it is. It's a showpiece. It could go to a Goodwood museum and stand on its own. Then we go to obviously slightly newer modern classics, 1985, 1986. Now these cars are probably a weekend car, a Saturday car, a run out on a Sunday afternoon car, not an everyday car. And a car that you can keep and cherish and hopefully maintain a value and increase in a value. Yeah, it's going to need a little bit of maintenance, a little bit spent maybe each year, just to keep the vehicle road legal and road worthy. But people buy them to enjoy and to look after. It's probably a little bit slow at this present moment in time in the economic climate. I think everybody's a little bit wary. Saying that, last year it was very good for us. We've been trading with Peter Vardy Heritage now since 2016. So originally we were in Glasgow. We're very fortunate now to move in Edinburgh and take what was our mini showroom, and we can put obviously an array of vehicles in here, and we have a storage facility as well. So we're currently sitting with about 44 cars in stock, hailing from £10,000 to £250,000. The market, I think, will lift again next year. I think we are just in a little bit of an uncertain time with everything that's going on with governments, etc. But pricing static, and I think there'll be an uplift than there usually is by February, March. Winter time, people are putting these things away, locking them up and keeping them warm.
What do you think would make somebody buy a car like this? Granted, it is quite an expensive buy, when a brand new Porsche 911 is 100 grand cheaper.
You're right. The car is double the price and more. But that person who can afford or probably would purchase this probably would also have one of those if you wanted to drive every day. You can't compare this to. The only thing you could compare this to is another one, because there's nothing else to compare it to. It's in its own individual right, unique. Yes, there'll be another one, but you certainly wouldn't be able to. I would defy you to go for a drive and end up parking next to another one.
And if your absolute dream car could roll into the lot right now, what would it be?
I like the old classic Ferraris.
Mm-hmm.
The Ferrari Dino. Yeah, that would raise an eyebrow. That would raise an eyebrow. I think they're all just so elegant and so in their own individual right, because they're a modern day car. Let's be honest now, a car can pass you on a motorway. I seen a car yesterday, and to be perfectly honest, I think I'm quite up on motor cars now. I didn't have a clue what it was. But these cars, no.
Just nothing like them.
Yeah.
The vintage car market is a treasure trove of incredible cars, and Britain has played a really big part in its history. Everything from the Mini to the Aston Martin to the Bentley was pioneered here in Britain. And yes, there are some downfalls to having vintage cars, but I'm hoping I've shown you enough of a vintage lover's point of view that maybe you can just start to see the appeal in it yourself. As for me, I'm seeing myself in this beauty. Steve, how much for this one? Yeah, the Morris Mini Moke.